With only 148 Americans officially killed in action and only 467 wounded, ours seemed to be a shining victory in the Gulf. But this victory has lost its glow somewhat now that we know that tens of thousands of our Gulf service people have become sick from a mysterious, debilitating, and sometimes deadly syndrome. The Department of Veterans Affairs has reported that approximately 6,000 soldiers have died since the war's conclusion, including 1,300 18 to 24-year-olds who were in perfect health prior to the war, but who mysteriously contracted various forms of cancer after their involvement with the military.
This war was a different war. It wasn't the war of gun shells, of bullets, exploding mines. This was a new technology.
It's like they use sophisticated weapons on us, and we're suffering from some type of sophisticated illness, but there's no sophisticated protocol or treatment program for us.
My doctor says we brought something back from the Gulf, and it's unexplainable.
This one, unlike Agent Orange, is not going to die when the veteran dies. This one is contagious. This one is a biological, and it is loose.
My greatest fear is that the human race has been experimented on and that it will continue.
Doctors and researchers say they have found significant brain damage, immune system problems, autoimmune diseases. We found early on that the veterans were showing viruses, and not just one virus like the cytomegalovirus in their body, but multiples.
But I look at it sometimes that he probably would have been better off getting killed over there. It's an awful thing to say, than coming home and watching him suffer the way he's suffering now.
There's been a recent cascade of revelations about our Gulf War experience, and today, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist, simply a reader of mainstream media to understand that our government has been trying to hide important facts from us for most of this decade.
It's a great day to be a soldier, and it's a great day to be an American.
You trusted the people that gave the orders, and I guess they trusted the people that gave them the orders.
We should have learned something from our Vietnam experience with the Agent Orange, but it appears that we really have not. Our veterans are having to go through the same process that our Vietnam veterans did, and that's just totally unacceptable.
It's harder fighting the VA, and it's definitely harder fighting the Pentagon than it was the Iraqis.
They're afraid to come forward now. These guys are not afraid of machine guns and bombs and sandstorms, but they're afraid of their own government.
In the last 6 years, I've interviewed hundreds of Gulf War veterans, medical doctors, scientists, legislators. Many of these people are concerned that they don't want to live the same legacy as what happened during and after the Vietnam War, waiting 20 years before a reluctant government, Defense Department, Pentagon would do anything to compensate for the illnesses that GIs claimed had been caused by the defoliant 2,4,5-T Agent Orange. Now, more than 100,000 of the service personnel that served in the Gulf are claiming that they are suffering from Gulf War syndrome. What is it the Pentagon, the Defense Department, the Veterans Administration fears by being open, candid, coming forward and laying all the facts before the American public? Were these veterans exposed to experimental vaccines? What was the effect of depleted uranium? How about the anthrax and botulism inoculations given to them? These are some of the questions that we're going to look for answers. I'm Gary Null. Join me now for an in-depth look at Gulf War syndrome, a deadly legacy.
First realized that there was something wrong with my son in January of 1992, when we found him on the floor in his bedroom with the lights out, banging his head against the floor, suffering from headaches. As we worked with that program, we noticed other symptoms. He was suffering from sensitivity. His eyes were hurt with bright lights. He had loose teeth. He had hair falling out. He had rashes. He had water blisters. He had mood swings. He had weight swings. He had toenails falling out. He had things like aching joints, sleeplessness. All of the issues that have since come to be known as Gulf War syndrome.
I have what is considered a demyelinating disease. The myelin in my brain was unraveling. A civilian doctor has diagnosed me with untreated epilepsy, and but the Army is going with unexplained neurological damage.
If I wear diapers, because I don't know when I'm going to have a bowel movement. I have no rectal muscles, no bladder muscles, no sphincter muscles left. And then the easiest way for me to remember is I have memory impairment. I was diagnosed with toxic encephalopathy of the brain, decreased blood supply to the left thalamus of the brain. I have central and peripheral vision disorders. I can't see beyond this. I've developed hypothyroidism, and they said all I have left is some thyroid strands now. And I could probably show you this. I developed skin rashes that before they were just rashes, but now they've turned out to be, they break open and they blister and I bleed. And I have scarring from here on down from this type of rash that developed. This has been going on since 1993, but before they were just little papules, but now they turn into blisters. Then I have a suppressed autoimmune system. I was diagnosed with antibody development, chemical toxicity, and neurological problems.
According to Dr. Garth and Nancy Nicholson, the chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, characteristic of sick Gulf vets, is induced by an unusual microorganism that seems to be the product of weaponization, that is, human manipulation of germs for the purposes of warfare. The Nicholsons report that the organism present in each of the Gulf War syndrome patients is an odd variant of a typical mycoplasma.
Dr. Nicholson has observed 50% of the sick veterans have Mycoplasma incognitus fermentans with the HIV envelope gene attached. And he originally seemed to think that this could have been a biological attack. But my accumulated evidence as a researcher is now indicating that this may in fact have been an experiment wherein many troops were vaccinated with an experimental AIDS vaccine.
They found in the blood an excess of a product called squalene, which is apparently an adjuvant and an addition to a vaccine. Normally, a product called alum is added as an adjuvant, but in this instance, in the blood, they are finding an excess of this agent called squalene, along with the HIV envelope. Now, I'm not suggesting that our troops now have AIDS, by no means. However, when we're talking about an HIV envelope, we are in fact talking about a portion of the AIDS virus itself. But that portion, which facilitates the entry into the body cells themselves of whatever accompanies it.
I woke up one morning and these knuckles in my hand were like golf balls. And I just kind of blew it off. Maybe I injured something or an old injury. And about 2 days later, I woke up and my feet were swollen like elephantitis. Purple, I couldn't walk on them. They were very tingly and sensitive, so I would have to crawl. And at this point in my life, we had a newborn son who I was trying to take care of also. And so I would have to crawl to his crib and lift myself up and get him out of the crib and crawl to the, I mean, it was amazing. My parents helped out quite a bit.
My son cannot balance a checkbook without help. He can't remember how to get home at times. We are talking about a young man that was a student of the year for his county, National Honor Society, captain of the rifle team, president of Vicar, the vocational education programs, that can't remember. You send him to the store for half a dozen things and he can't remember. Comes home with a Coke and he forgot what he was supposed to get. This is not normal.
It's amazing how many soldiers are dying from brain tumors and cancers that they don't even consider those a problem, or the car accidents. And it's really strange. One of my other friends died in a car accident. And because we don't have that memory recall like we used to, you could be sitting at a stop sign and knowing that it's red, but you know the other cars, there's nothing coming, the other cars went, so all of a sudden you go, and you have to really teach yourself to pay attention again. Watch how you drive, put the car in reverse, look where you're, it's like a whole training that you have to reteach yourself how to do simple things.
I was just always healthy. I had 7.5 years of karate before the service. I boxed for 2 years. I was just always on the go. And when these things started happening to me, there was no way. Maybe old age or whatever, but I was thinking at the time I was only 30, 31 years old. And I didn't know what to do. I just absolutely did not know what to do. And somebody told me, you're a veteran, go to a VA hospital. And I tried civilian doctors first, and they did not have a clue. I went to a hand specialist, a bone specialist. They didn't have a clue. And I went to the VA hospital, and that's when they refused to see me because there was no record of anything, of me even existing in the service.
An important dimension of the problem is that families of Gulf War veterans have not been spared from suffering. A survey of 1,000 servicemen and women conducted by the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs revealed that an assortment of illnesses associated with Gulf War syndrome are in fact contagious.
It's difficult for the families. Quite often, they'll end up divorced. So you have to understand, people's personalities change as a result of chemical biological warfare. That's something that people don't understand unless they've been through it. I'll give you an example. My husband's case, he developed pancreatic cancer after the war. Or actually, I think it was probably during the war, but there's no conclusive evidence to support that. His personality changed about a year before he died. He was always extremely active, never sat still, always mowing the lawn or cleaning the garage or something, always running. He went into a serious depression. He would never lose his temper. He would lose, after he came back from the war, slowly he began to lose his temper over ridiculous things. Not knowing, looking back now and not knowing at the time that he was sick, I thought he was crazy. What else are you to think? And people don't understand that, and quite oftentimes couples will end up divorced before the spouse realizes that this person is sick.
To me, he's like going downhill every day. I mean, he's not getting any better. And as far as myself, I was on the verge of being a diabetic when he left. But since he came home, my sugar has been totally out of control. I've lost 100 pounds in the past year, and the doctors can't understand why my sugar still hasn't gone down after losing 100 pounds. I have the achy joints. Now I have fibromyalgia. Also, I have the problem with the burning semen. So our sex life, needless to say, is not that great anymore due to that fact, because it's really gets severe, and my gynecologist says he's never seen anything like it.
What type of exposure is going to transport the disease from one person to another? And that's scary. And I don't know if I should use the term disease because I have no idea whether it's a disease or whether it's a couple dozen, and That's but that's the one thing that scares me, is giving it to somebody I love.
My worst fears, there's two. One is that I'm going to die a very HIV-like death, because so far, so much of this has mimicked HIV, and I'm going to end up like a skeleton in the bed. And my second fear is that I'm going to pass this along to the people that I love. And that's what really upsets me.
Germs from the Gulf are good travelers, according to members of the medical community who have expressed concern regarding the possibility of infectious microorganisms becoming fastened to equipment and other materials. They cite instances of Navy personnel on aircraft carriers who never set foot on land, but who mysteriously acquired the syndrome subsequent to active duty in the Gulf region. When aircraft returning from overseas service were unloaded in domestic Air Force bases at the conclusion of the war, the contaminated equipment aboard the returning planes may have facilitated the disease's dissemination into the general population. It's estimated that clothing brought back by soldiers may contain infectious microorganisms that can survive for up to 7 years.
These soldiers, myself included, brought this stuff home to their spouses and their children, and they cross-contaminated them. The people that were in charge knew that this was happening. Their documentation proves that they had full and complete knowledge that this was going to happen. They still brought troops through to Tallil Airfield and Jalaba Airfield, which was in the contamination zone downwind from Kamasiyah and all the other destroyed facilities. They marched them through there a few days after Kamasiyah was destroyed and put them on C-130s and took them down into Saudi Arabia and immediately retrograded them from there back home. They went into a contaminated area and they took it home to their kids and their wives and their husbands. That is absolutely unconscionable, and something needs to be changed about that. This was policy-driven, not fact-driven. And the people at the highest level of command knew about that, including General Schwarzkopf. General Franks, who was in charge of 7th Corps, knew it too. The documentation proves that as well.
And it has to have been fairly well known before we went over. When I remember very vividly the night I left, they went through all of our bags, making sure that we didn't bring any sand home as souvenirs. They told us we'd go to the brig. They told us we'd be up for captain's mast if they found sand in our things. And if you gave it up now, you were okay. And a lot of us did. A lot of us just wanted to bring a little sand back as a souvenir. Couldn't do it. After I got back, I went to the blood bank to donate blood. I was told, oh, you're a Gulf War vet, you can't donate blood. I said, why? Well, we just got word that you can't. So since 1991, I've been unable to donate blood, and I don't know why. But there's nothing wrong with me. I find that a little disturbing.
It's been estimated that 30% of Gulf War veterans' babies are born with deformities. This is 10 times higher than the number of birth defects one would expect to find in the general population.
Well, now my son was born with a birth defect as a result of the war. Now he's had cleft lip and palate. He's had 3 surgeries. He needs at least 2 more. VA is not covering any of that. They've denied all of our benefits. He has speech therapy. He has tubes in his ears. He's had constant ear infections, so now he has hearing loss in one side. He has no father. He died when he was 2. He was not pleased that we were going to have another baby. Not that he didn't want to have another baby, but he was afraid. He was afraid of what he was exposed to, the shots he was given. I didn't share that concern at that time. I was just thrilled. And then my son was born, and my husband carried the guilt of that child until he died. He carried that guilt with him. He always blamed himself for it. I never placed blame. I figured God gave us a child, gave us a handicapped child because we could handle a handicapped child. That was it.
The study that was brought out about last year, that there are no significant abnormalities in babies born to Gulf War vets, the research was so significantly flawed, just from any researcher's point of view. They discounted all the births in civilian hospitals, and they discounted births in other states, that I am really dreadfully afraid to try and conceive and carry a child. I am just looking at my hair and my memory and my skin and things like that. I can't imagine what's happening on the inside of me and what may have happened to that very fragile genetic material that's in the ovaries. It scares me to death to try and think about carrying a child.
We were never warned not to have children or to wait or to take precautions due to chemical or exposures or anything of that nature.
My whole family life has changed. I don't have that intimacy anymore with my husband because I have no feelings. I don't play ball anymore with my son because by the time I throw the ball, my muscles and my arms hurt so bad, they get so heavy. So when they say the soldiers are in this for the money, it's not a matter of money. We just want to get well. We want someone to take an interest in us and try and treat us.
Our goal is not to find out what made us sick. Our goal is not to find out who made us sick. And our goal is definitely not to find out who we're going to put in prison for it. That will come. That will come with the help of the media, the help of Congress, the help of the Attorney General's office. That will come. What our goal is our health. We want our health back. We want our family members' health back.
I've had doctors that are sympathetic and want to know more that have had to be signed out by their higher up, their chief of staff, before they could say anything. They were monitored in what they said. Even had one physician that her husband served over there with us that closed the door after her chief of staff left and said, I want to see everything you have. I want to know what's going on. And when I took it in and left it with her, I took her a stack this high, and I left it with her. The next thing I knew is I had a first sergeant up there going through the CCEP program, and he laughed the next time I saw him. He said, well, I have a feeling you dropped off a package of information to somebody, because we saw a female doctor flying down the hall after the doctor in charge, being very upset and mad that there was a lot of information out there that wasn't being shared with the physicians.
I had one doctor tell me, he was an Air Force doctor, matter of fact, captain, who did not physically examine me, but spent 10 minutes with me in his examining room, asking me questions. And after discussing the gynecological problems, he looked me point blank in the face and asked me why I even wanted to get pregnant, that I was never going to get pregnant, so why even try? I left there in tears that day.
Some would tell you it's all in your head. Others would just, their reaction to it was in such a way that you knew they didn't believe, that there could have been any connection, that you were either making it up or that you were malingering or that it was all psychosomatic.
If I were a soldier, I'd be outraged when they go to a VA facility, they explain the symptoms they have. They're real, they're not imagined, and the VA is so unresponsive. It is really hard to explain that, but there are probably some who have post-traumatic stress disorder. There are probably some within the range of the 700,000 soldiers who were sent, but probably a very minor factor in this. Chemical exposure, the vaccines, a whole host of other things are right at the center of this.
I don't believe that this is any kind of classic PTSD. In fact, my observations are that the rates for PTSD were very low during the war, and that the actual figures, although we hear so much about stress being a contributing factor, are very low. I think that I'm observing depression, frustration, anger, which I think are normal responses to people having illnesses that they don't understand.
My son has fought for the last 7 years to get medical care. We have done everything that the VA has asked us to do. We have filed the paperwork. We have done whatever requests that they have made from us as far as going to testing and things like that. He still has not received medical care. When the recruiter sat on my couch to recruit my son as a member of the United States All-Volunteer Army. He told us that if our son got hurt, wounded, sick, or injured in the service of his country, that they would be taken care of. What we want, what I want as a parent of a veteran, is for the United States government, as per the Department of Defense, to honor the contract that they made with us. Not a handout, not a pension, but to take care of the sick soldier.
We did our mission. Now, take care of us, or else enable us to take care of ourselves.
It's not possible in a short period of time to tell an entire story, not one that spans nearly a decade and hundreds of thousands of lives. But it's a beginning. For all the Gulf War veterans and their families and those who've tried to help them, hopefully this program will be one step further in trying to open up the door of secrecy that has occurred around this entire phenomena. I'm Gary Knoll. Thank you very much for watching.